Hi, I'm Dashiell Horseman, and this is my video presentation on Jean Jaurès. Jean was one of the most influential socialist leaders in French history. He was born in 1859 and was known for his advocacy of workers' rights, democracy, and anti-militarism, and the peace that came with it. His career was shaped by his commitment to social justice and his opposition to war. He played a crucial role in uniting several socialist factions in France and was a powerful voice against militarism, especially leading up to World War I. Jean's early life began in Castres, which is a town in southern France where he was born. He came from a middle-class family, which gave him access to education in intellectual circles, which would later help him become a professor of philosophy. His academic excellence led him to study at the prestigious École Normale Supérieure, where he developed a deep understanding of philosophy, history, and political theory. He became a professor of philosophy, as I said, and that shaped his ability to articulate complex political and social ideas. And his early experience in educational circles and thought circles provided a strong foundation for his future career in socialist democracy movements. His political ideas. Jaurès believed that socialism and democracy were inseparable. Unlike some radical socialists during the time who favored revolution, he sought to achieve change through democratic means, and without all of the bloodshed and violence that comes with revolution. He fought for social justice, arguing that economic inequality was a major source of suffering. He was also a staunch opponent of nationalism and militarism, which was at a very high level during this time, believing that international cooperation was necessary for peace and progress. His ideals placed him in direct opposition to those who wanted to push France into war in the earliest 20th century, and to those who really promoted the staunch militarism and nationalism that was common during the time. Some of his key works and actions was his contributions to founding La Humanite, a newspaper that became the voice of socialists throughout France. He was also instrumental in unifying different socialist groups, as I touched on previously, and he brought them together under the French section of the Workers' International, or SFIO for short. This unification helped give the working class a stronger political voice and united them. Additionally, he played a key role in the Dreyfus affair, defending Alfred Dreyfus, who was a Jewish officer wrongly accused of treason. His stand against anti-Semitism and injustice further cemented his reputation as a champion of human rights, as he went against the French government, which fully wanted to pin Dreyfus as a treason so that they would look better, even though they eventually found proof that he was innocent. This was a big step going against the government and actively combating them. His socialist leadership. As the leader of SFIO, Jean constantly pushed for reforms that would improve the life of workers, as they argued for the working class. He argued that socialism could be achieved through the democratic process without revolution and the violence and bloodshed that came with it. He was very against violent revolution, which had been a common way of revolt and change, leading to more kind of democratic freedoms in a lot of countries in Europe during this time. His belief in negotiation and legislation to change the system set him apart from other socialist leaders of his time. While some socialists believed that radical action was the only way to change society, Jean insisted that meaningful and lasting reforms through legislation and institutions like Parliament were a lot more powerful than revolution. This made him a controversial figure in socialist circles, as a lot of them were very pro-revolutionary. However, even though this was controversial, he still stood as a very kind of respected figure as the leader of SFIO. One of the most important things about him was his stance on World War I. Obviously, he was very kind of against nationalism and militarism, which was one of the kind of biggest parts of World War I. And so he believed that the war would only really bring suffering to the working class and kind of the people, as they were the ones going in, dying. They were the ones feeling the economic effects of having to fight a war. And so he tried to convince kind of the European nations to resolve their disputes through diplomacy. He worked tirelessly to prevent the war. He spoke at international conferences and urged workers across countries to resist nationalist propaganda and militarist propaganda. However, these views made him a target, as he was very against national extremists, which were a large majority in lots of European states. And so, tragically, on July 31st, 1914, just a few days before the war began, World War I, John was assassinated by a nationalist who saw him as a traitor to France. His death was a devastating blow to the peace movement that had been going on at the time in response to World War I. And so this kind of derailed a lot of the kind of peace movements that were happening at the time. His legacy and impact. Even though he was assassinated, his ideas and kind of pro-advocacy of like peaceful and diplomatic solutions lived on. He became a kind of martyr for socialist and peace movements, and his writings continue to inspire political movements long after his death. His newspaper, La Humanité, remained a significant publication in France, and many of the policies he fought for, such as workers' rights and social welfare programs, eventually became a reality. So even though a lot of stuff he didn't achieve while he was still alive, it would later become law and get passed into legislation due to the effects of what he had done in the past before his death. His legacy is highly honored for socialists and Democrats as a figure that was very against revolution, yet was still able to inspire such change through democratic processes and legislature. The conclusion. Jean was a key figure in French history, and a key figure in socialist democrat movements during the time and figures. His political ideas around democracy and socialism without revolution was kind of a revolutionary idea in itself. He his influence on socialist and democratic ideas in France, even though he got assassinated, was still very great. His ideas continued to influence socialists and pacifists and anti-militarism and anti-nationalism well after his death. And overall, his greatest contribution was providing his ideas and his method of legislature and democracy to create change and show that it was a feasible solution. Thank you for listening to my presentation on Jean Juarez. These are my sources. Thank you.